Okay, so this evening I saw Violent Night 2022, December 1st, 2nd, 2022, kind of on the borderline of the release date there. Die Hard meets Home Alone is the explicit and implicit premise of this one. It was about as stale as an old gingerbread cookie, but some holly jolly fun all the same. It's kind of literally just Home Alone in a couple of scenes. I mean, they just outright steal some of the jokes and gags from that one, although it's more openly R-rated. So there's that, and there even is also a reference to Die Hard at one point. So kind of on the nose there. You got your walkie-talkie, you got criminals trying to steal money, you got snowmobiles, you've got a mansion. You've also got Santa Claus, though. And in this particular case, that's played by David Harbour. You love to see him on the big screen, outside of a villain role. Everything is all uphill from Hellboy at this point. Beverly D'Angelo from the Christmas Vacation movies, among other things, so somebody with some cred for the holiday season, and John Leguizamo in the villain role. So as far as the execution of all of this, it varies. Some pretty mid green screen and a couple of scenes on the sleigh. I heard that the crew from Nobody, the action movie, was involved in the production of fights. Don't know if they necessarily had the same choreographers, certainly not the same direction, but still some pretty impressive mid-length takes and a couple of scenes, some great melee combat, a few explosions. There's a sledgehammer, apparently a Santa Claus's weapon of choice. They refer to him as Nickelmas at one point. I'm not sure if that is historically relevant. It's certainly not the same thing as Saint Nick. But he has some history about 1,000 years ago where he's apparently pretty handy with a sledgehammer, and so we get to see him take a couple of guys to task with that, which is wonderfully violent. There's some gross out humor and cursing for the sake of itself, sure. You got him throwing up and peeing and things like that, but he still has depth. The Santa in this movie still has some depth to him. I mean, it's not much more than him regaining his Christmas spirit, as these things usually go. But, you got your reindeer, you got your Mrs. Claus references, you got the love of milk and cookies and everything that you want and expect, and his portrayal of the character with some cool, badass Nordic tattoos when he briefly has his shirt off for a while is amusing. It's not just like a generic or one-note like badass or bad Santa, as Billy Bob Thornton would have it. It does do that for a little bit, some slobby Santa stuff, as I like to call it, but it eventually evolves. There's some great kills and attacks on people. The final bit, I won't spoil it, but holy cow, that was quite a mess. Uses ice skates as a weapon at one point. Stocking full of pool balls. His Skull Crusher, I think is the name of his actual original sledgehammer. Also, Santa doesn't know how guns work. Which is kind of funny. I guess we have to distinguish this from Mel Gibson's Fat Man somehow, in the Santa Claus for that matter, but I digress. This is basically that one old Mega 64 skit or any number of badass gags about, extreme Santa that have been kind of played for laughs. You've probably seen something like this in a Funny or Die skit or something within the last 10 years or so, but it's done with higher budget than usual. And I like a good action movie, and having it be also with a cast of characters and cast of actors that I enjoy, as is the case here with David Harbour and John Leguizamo and some of the supporting cast. The supporting cast. Okay, so yeah, there is an annoying family again. That's just one of those tropes. The irritating rich people in their fancy mansion. Your cute kid and kind of going up against them, and that's again, it's part of the subgenre. It's part of how this stuff works. I'm totally cool with it as far as that's concerned. Particulates all over the ground here. I'm supposed to put down a thing on the ground to not make that any worse than it is. But yeah, good fight scenes and shootouts and fist fights and nothing too heavily choreographed. But I would definitely watch it again. I can't necessarily say it's going to become a holiday tradition at this point. It's kind of just got one joke that's not terribly original, and it is a feature-length film. But in that capacity, it is still very entertaining, and I would recommend it if you like Christmas movies, if you like violent action movies, if you like David Harbour, you could do a lot worse. So I would say 6 out of 10.